Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the nuclear angle to this battle. Now, the battle between Russia and Ukraine continues for the fifth day after Russia launched its offensive against its neighbor last week. While negotiators from both sides have begun the dialogue process in Belarus, Russia has meanwhile raised the nuclear bogey. President Vladimir Putin put Russia's nuclear deterrent on high alert on Sunday in the face of a barrage of Western reprisals for his war on Ukraine. The United Nations has called the idea of nuclear weapons use inconceivable, while Ukraine's government said it saw the move as an intimidation attempt as delegations from both countries meet for the exploratory talks. Western powers, meanwhile, including the United States and NATO, have also sharply protested Putin's decision to put his country's nuclear deterrence forces into a special mode of combat service. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people are fleeing the fighting, with most crossing into Poland and others seeking shelter in Hungary, Romania, Moldova and Slovakia as well. Today, we will discuss and analyze all aspects of this conflict, including this nuclear angle. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. Rajiv Nayan, who is here with us in the studio. He's a Senior Research Associate at MPIDSA. We're also joined by Ms. Manpreet Sethi. She is a Distinguished Fellow at Center for Air Power Studies, and Professor Madhavdas Nalpat is also joining us, UNESCO Peace Chair at Manipal University. Welcome, all of you, to Sansad Television. I'll start with you, Dr. Nayan. Of course, sort of summarizing with the conflict stand that we would like to begin with. But let's also touch upon the most important and significant aspect of this conflict now. That is the nuclear angle. The question, and the most important question, is why such a stand being taken by Russian President Vladimir Putin just 5 days into the conflict?
No, first of all, there is nothing new in it. Those who have read Russian nuclear doctrine will not be surprised by the statement given by President Putin. They have already got 400 ICBM on alert. This is their policy. And he had just stated his policy. The only, you can say, question is the timing. Why did he make this statement when there is a crisis? When there is, you can say, quote-unquote, invasion or war taking place. As Ukrainian government says that it is intimidatory tactics. Yes, it could be intimidatory tactics, telling that, yeah, nuclear weapon is not out of this military strategy. This is one big point which we may want to see. But it is a written document that says that their third division is always on alert. So this is what he is stating, the obvious. He is not stating anything new or anything which is away from Russian stated doctrine.
Okay.
So I am not surprised. I don't know why it has been sensationalized too much by the media. I mean, even United States government has said don't make this kind of reckless statement. Yes, this statement at this time may not be desirable because it may just escalate, it may just create fear, or it may just create panic.
Okay.
This is the only issue I see. Otherwise, I don't see anything very dramatic, drastic taking place now.
Okay. Okay. So what you're referring to is that this is part of their, nuclear doctrine as well. Perhaps part of their strategy also.
1/3 of their nuclear warheads, nuclear arsenal will always be on alert. So that they have just told, okay, sit on alert, our deterrence forces. And he has used the term deterrence forces. What is perplexing is to deter sanctions. But yeah, if you again go through their doctrines, you will find that they may see it threatening their survival, something like that, key infrastructure. But it is slightly odd.
Okay.
Using it against sanctions, like threatening to use it against sanctions.
Okay.
This is a bit, not acceptable. Why are you saying like that? Okay, sanctions are slightly throttling. It is suffocating the Russian government, Putin especially, when there is even individual sanction against him. People are protesting even inside Russia. So these could be issues.
Okay.
But when using the statement is bizarre, I will just say.
Okay, and the timing is also very crucial here. Professor Madhavdas Nalpat, I'd like to bring you in here. if we go through the statements which have been made by the Russian president in the past 5 days, the first statement did make a clear indication to other nations also that anyone who interferes is not welcome, will do it at their own peril and will face the consequences which, their nation's history might not have seen. From there to this statement in 4 days of putting the nuclear deterrent forces on high alert, what should be the interpretation here? Just a strategy, or, in line with their nuclear doctrine, as Dr. Nayan is saying? The timing seems suspect, though.
Look, I'm really surprised that strategic analysts across the world do not understand the importance of Belarus and Ukraine to Russia. Now, please remember, Vladimir Putin, even when he was born into a family which was serving the Communist Party, which was a theist, he was secretly baptized as a Christian, as a Russian Orthodox Christian. And he's been a Christian throughout his life. I'm surprised that people are forgetting that the original home of the Russian Orthodox Church is Kiev in 988. And it is from Kiev that Vladimir I, the Russian emperor at that point in time, he announced his baptism into Christianity because he was marrying the Byzantine emperor's daughter, Basil II, if I remember. And as a consequence, from then on, Russia became a Christian state. The Soviet Union tried to make an end of that, and that is among the most important factors, as for example in Poland, behind the fall of communism there. So please understand why this is important. Please also understand that, we in India take our 5,000 years of history seriously, and correctly so. Our Prime Minister has very correctly drawn attention to the fact that the history of India goes back at least 5,000 years. Narendra Modi is absolutely right. Putin, he keeps talking about history, and Western historians, poor chaps, their history books are maximum 60 or 70 years back into history. And they don't, for them, even about, 70 years is quite a lot. Usually it's about 70 months. The reality is, very, very frankly, that Kiev, Ukraine, is central to the Russian Orthodox Church. And Belarus is central to the Russian Orthodox Church. And if every other part of the world completely becomes anti-Russian, these two countries cannot be allowed to become anti-Russian by any student of Russian history. They know why. Any serious student of Russian history. Now, I want to end by saying it's obvious why NATO wanted to get control of Belarus. They tried to do that through a kind of street revolution, which they succeeded in doing in Ukraine. If you remember, the Maidan Revolution, so-called, in which an elected government led by a Russian-speaking president, Yanukovsky, was basically toppled and replaced by street demonstrations, which were regarded as the birth of freedom in Ukraine. Well, they wanted to repeat that in Belarus, and so far as Ukraine is concerned, they wanted to solidify that, because if NATO had control over Ukraine, it would have, in a sense, control over the heart of the Russian Orthodox Church. And Vladimir Putin is supposed to be the defender of that church.
But one small question here, Professor Nalpat, one small question here, given the context which you're referring to. If that's the situation, and historically that's the situation is also rightly, but why then, issue a threat or make statements like putting your, nuclear deterrent forces on alert in a conflict with a nation which is so important and so crucial to your country's existence? I'm talking about Russia and Putin.
Look, I'm very sorry, but I mean, some people may believe that arming Ukraine to the teeth with all kinds of weapons, not just Stinger missiles, but advanced aircraft, advanced artillery systems, everything else, making war threats against Russia, arming Ukraine when the government is plainly against Russia, wants to break completely free of any Russian influence, wants to join NATO, wants to join the EU. Incidentally, Vladimir Putin tried very hard to join both NATO and EU 22 years ago. He tried 3-4 years. He was rebuffed. Well, you know, I mean, and the kind of statements they have been making, you see the statement they made on Putin. They're openly calling Putin a madman. A madman is among the most polite things. Biden called him a killer. The US Defense Secretary called him full tonto. He is fully mad. He's been called mad by European leaders, North American leaders. Now, if you don't believe that any of this is threatening, well, I don't know what you define as a threat.
I'll come to that part as well, Professor Nalpat. I'll come to that part as well. That's a very important point which you're making. We'll come to that part also in the second round. But let me also bring in Ms. Manpreet Sethi here. Ms. Sethi, from your perspective, you know, there is an ongoing conflict between two sovereign nations. One of them is a nuclear power, and the nuclear power, you know, gives a message that I'm putting my nuclear arsenal on alert. Now that, of course, sends alarm bells ringing across the world.
Yes, of course it does, because anytime you mention the word nuclear, you know, it leads to images in your mind about what this is going to possibly lead to. And, you know, as Dr. Rajiv Nayak started by saying that he was stating the obvious, yes, given that Russia has a first use nuclear doctrine, a part of its nuclear forces are always on alert. But I think what he's doing in stating this obvious is to draw attention to that fact, that here is a nuclear weapon state which can wreak havoc if it wants to. Now, you know, while the threat is being made to Ukraine to say that back off, that, you know, you're not going to do this, obviously the signaling is meant for the larger audience, which is essentially the US and the Western powers, the NATO. And that is where Russia is targeting the threat making which is happening here. Manipulation, signaling, nuclear signaling is part of nuclear strategy. And as we all understand, Russia does have a strategy which is supposed to be, you know, escalate to de-escalate. So it has always a signal that it could escalate a little bit to the nuclear level in order to de-escalate the larger conflict. Now, whether this can ever serve a purpose is a different matter. But given that manipulation of the mind of the adversary is the purpose of a nuclear weapon, this is exactly the reason why he's made this statement today. So there is no surprise in the timing in which the statement has been made, except that it seems to have come a rather bit early. You know, just fourth day into the conflict, and he starts talking about raising the alert levels of nuclear weapons, even when the US and NATO have made it very clear that they have no intention of militarily getting into the conflict, except for providing equipment and you know, material to Ukraine to hold off Russia. Now, I agree with Professor Nalpat on how important Ukraine and Kyiv is to Russia. I think we all need to understand that there are certain red lines, and to touch those red lines then creates more security dilemmas than actually resolving them. So this will have to be treated rather differently in terms of how Ukraine is kept neutral, non-aligned, independent, to the extent that it becomes a buffer between the two regions.
Okay, that's a very you know, important aspect there, an interesting way to put it in terms of the overall conflict as well. But coming back to the nuclear angle, you know, as Ms. Sethi was referring to, that it looks like this is the strategy which you were earlier pointing out, Dr. Nayan, that escalate to de-escalate. But amidst all this, you know, conflict which is going on, and again this aspect of the statement coming in on the fourth day, this is a very dangerous strategic play, isn't it?
Definitely, but before that I would like to touch upon the issues which Professor Nalpat had raised about the history. And a second thing which Manpreet told about the buffer zone, which generally people expect, statisticians expect it to be. Look, there is class of history. Just a couple of months ago, Putin made a very fascinating speech, maybe running around 24, 22 pages if you just bring down on A4 size. And he has tried to negate Ukrainian concept of nationalism or denied Ukrainian nationalism, which has been, in fact, Ukraine has built its own narrative of Ukrainian nationalism away from Russian nationalism. It started well with Hershanovsky. His 10-volume work tried to counter Russian concept, Russian nationalism. It says Ukraine is different.
Okay.
It tried to do so. And in fact, it carried on. It was, the person was arrested, then he had, later on, the Soviet regime gave him very respectable farewell when he passed away.
Okay.
But all these things happened. So there was a struggle. So what I would like to say, once Putin has to convince Ukrainian that you are part of us, like his statement starts, Ukraine and Russia are the one. So if you are hammering on that, so this is not the way. So you have to, once you are fighting an ideological battle, and you have to convince them that we are one, like whether it is Belarus or that. So then this strategy may backfire.
Okay.
So this is one point I would like to mention. Second, even Yeltsin, I mean, if you could recollect, just after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the formation of several states out of it, Yeltsin had also protested that Crimea cannot go to Ukraine, plus two states which territories which we are witnessing
Donetsk and
now.
Luhansk.
So they were also not part, and they are not part. In fact, there was a press statement made after that. So this is a long, old struggle. There is no doubt about it. And of course, Russia faced all the major onslaughts from Napoleon Bonaparte to Hitler through Ukraine. So it is strategically also no doubt relevant. But slightly, I don't know, nuclear issue should have been brought in, as Manpreet rightly pointed out. It was a signal to NATO and the Western Bloc in general.
Okay.
I think it is bad signaling. It is what is happening now. Russia is losing its image all over the world, its position. Even it is losing its sympathy from its old friends. So now, if there is any voting, I mean, I saw one of the votings taking place in one of the international organizations. Not even 7 to 8 countries are siding with it. So this kind of behavior will further isolate Russia.
Okay.
And it will make the task of its friends further difficult.
Okay.
So I think I don't know whether as I told you, Russia is a strategically very rich country. It has got great heritage, a strategic heritage, which many, even China, I hold that it doesn't have.
Okay.
But it is strategically not a very good move. So once you are you going to target, what are you going to do? Are you going to target the entire population and kill them in Kyiv or in other places? Or you are going to introduce nuclear arsenals in it? So what are you signaling?
Perhaps as Manpreet said, escalate to de-escalate.
No, escalate to de-escalate is like Brezhnev doctrine was renounced immediately in 1985, which had come. So it had
some relevance at that point in time, but right now it might.
What are you escalating? Now you have already escalated.
It might play against you. That's what you're pointing out.
Well, she has a point. If you read the Western newspapers yesterday,
okay.
I mean, it is badly mixed up. Once they say they told that Russia is making this statement, immediately they're saying, and Ukraine is ready for talks.
Okay.
It means it conveys the message because Russia is giving this message. That's why Ukraine is ready.
These will obviously be a part of discussion and analysis. We'll have to look at situations more. Facts will tumble out as well. But quickly, we are running short of time. But Professor Nalpat, I'll come to you for 2 minutes before I go to Manpreet for the concluding comments. In terms of, the overall historical aspect as well, which you pointed out, and as Dr. Nayan also referred to it, ultimately, at the end of the day, these are two sovereign, independent countries.
Look, I want to point out that modern war involves war on the health of citizens. We have seen that in play over the last 2 years. It involves financial war, and if I may say so, it doesn't just involve kinetic war. There's been a financial war going on against Russia. Now, Putin has said time and time again, and remember, I have always stood for a strong India-US security alliance, a partnership between India and the United States to protect the Indo-Pacific. Both Rajiv and Manpreet are aware of that. I'm speaking from that perspective. The reality is, he has always warned that you come after me with sanctions, I will respond more forcefully. Each time he responded forcefully, they came up with more sanctions. He responded even more forcefully. And this action-reaction escalation has been continuing. Putin has done exactly what he said he would do. And I again want to remind you, for heaven's sake, please don't underestimate the importance of Kiev as a spiritual capital of Russia. It's not Moscow, it's Kiev. And to NATO and to Putin. NATO has, even from 1992, my two friends on this panel will agree, been hostile to Russia. Now they are once again very happy because once again the entire West has forgotten China, forgotten the Indo-Pacific, and is concentrating on Russia as in the past, even after 1992, which is absurd. So the fact of the situation is selective amnesia on history, putting all the onus on one particular side and not another side. There has to be equal-minded treatment. In my view, Russian forces will finish their offensive only after Ukraine is demilitarized in effect, that it no longer poses a military threat to Russia, whether in NATO or whatever. And if NATO comes there, well, there is likely to be a wider conflict involving the nuclear dimension. That's what Putin is saying. Don't think when this issue is concerned, and I'm going to, when you're crossing a red line, I'll cross your red line. So may I say, we are at a very dangerous moment.
Indeed.
2 weeks of this war, the global economy will be very severely impacted.
Indeed. It is a very dangerous moment. You're right, Professor Nalpat. It is indeed a very dangerous moment, both from the security point of view, the safety point of view, as well as economic point of view. Quick concluding comments from you, Manpreet. In terms of, again, coming back to the core question, which we are discussing today, the nuclear angle, should we be worried? Should the world be worried? No. By we, I mean, should the world be worried?
Yes, I understand that. And I think the answer to that is yes and no. As far as the nuclear weapons are concerned, yes, because there are larger consequences of even the signaling, the brinksmanship which is playing out. Because even as the stock markets might have crashed everywhere, the stock of nuclear weapons is likely to go up as a result of what we are seeing here. Already Belarus has passed a referendum yesterday saying that they don't want to remain non-nuclear any longer. Countries like Japan are reconsidering whether they should have nuclear weapons of their own. So there is likely to be greater proliferation as a result of what we are seeing here. The value of nuclear weapons could go up, and that is a matter of concern because the risks of the inadvertent use of nuclear weapons grow when the numbers of weapons grow with many more countries and the command and control processes take time to stabilize. But as far as the use of nuclear weapons by Russia is concerned, while one can never say never, with President Putin, I don't think it can ever make sense to him that he could use the nuclear weapons and come out looking better in this conflict.
Okay. So there it is, various angles, developing situation. Thank you so much, Manpreet, as well as Professor Madhav Das Nalpat and Dr. Rajiv Nain as well for sharing your views and insight. As our experts were pointing out, clearly this is a situation wherein the Russian President Putin's announcement of putting his nuclear deterrent forces on high alert is a cause of concern, but we'll have to wait and watch as to how the situation moves from here vis-a-vis the ongoing battle between Russia and Ukraine, as well as the dialogue process, which has just begun in Belarus between the negotiators from both sides. We'll keep you updated on all the developments. But before we leave, let us also inform you about a very important announcement vis-a-vis our show Perspective. In fact, from tomorrow onwards, that is 1st of March, Perspective will be aired at 8:30 p.m. on Sansad television instead of 9:30 p.m. So every day you can catch a new episode of Perspective at 8:30 p.m. Although all these episodes will be available on our YouTube channel as well, where you can go log in and find out the respective episodes and watch them as well. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.